brunch. It's delicious, but it's also really, really expensive. $25 for eggs and bacon? What if you only had $2? In this video, I'm gonna see if I can make a delicious restaurant-style brunch for only $2. Before we get started, let's talk about the rules of the challenge. I only have $2. I have to buy all of my ingredients for that $2. That's gonna be way too expensive for us.
This looks like the best price.
Except pantry essentials, things like olive oil, salt. I don't need to buy those. Rule number 2, I'm only including the parts that are included in the dish. For instance, if I buy a dozen eggs, I'm only gonna count the price of one egg, not the whole dozen. Let's get out of here. Let's go to the grocery store and start looking for some ingredients. It's a little rainy and disgusting out here today, but good day to make brunch. Let's head to the grocery store just around the corner. We need eggs, butter, lots of choices for ham, but that's gonna be way too expensive for us, even though it's gonna be pretty delicious. Yeah, I think this is looking more up our alley. Okay, I need English muffins. Over here, maybe? These are crackers. So we've got our first problem in this challenge. Okay, I've got an idea. I'm gonna need some milk. I only need one of these. This is hard to do one-handed. A bit of bread flour. Go over here. We've got eggs, we've got butter, we've got some bacon. We're making Eggs Benedict. Eggs Benedict is my go-to brunch order. I absolutely love it. It's a delicious poached egg. I struggled with poached eggs until I learned the secret that I'm gonna share with you later in this video about how to get a perfect poached egg every single time. Eggs Benedict also has a luxurious Hollandaise sauce. It's got a poached egg and then it's got a butter and egg sauce. It's just eggs to the extreme. You've probably seen people with double boilers and whisking it constantly and the sauce not turning out. I know a simple way to make a Hollandaise sauce that comes out perfect every single time. I couldn't find English muffins, but I think that's a good thing because I was coming very close to that $2 budget. So we're gonna make English muffins from scratch. You can make an English muffin for like 20 cents and it's not that hard to do. So let's start cooking. So I'm gonna start off by using a scale. I like using this so that I can measure things accurately. I'm gonna add some whole milk. You might notice this looks a little different than the milk I bought. I had this in my fridge, it was open, but I'm still counting it on the pricing. Measure out some sugar and then add in some yeast. The yeast is gonna feed on that sugar and it's gonna give us those nooks and crannies that we really want in our English muffin. Once it's mostly dissolved, set it aside. I made a mistake, I did this in the wrong bowl, so I'm just gonna transfer that over. And then in my initial bowl, I'm gonna add some bread flour. Then pour in my milk and yeast and sugar mixture. Give it a stir, it's gonna be really, really wet at this point. That's perfectly fine. You'll see a little later how that comes together. Cover it with some plastic wrap and a towel, and we're gonna set this aside. So that's as easy as the first step is for creating English muffins. We are going to let them sit overnight, which is gonna do two things. Yeast are gonna feed on the sugar and it's gonna release carbon dioxide. It's gonna create those little holes that are so delicious in English muffin. By letting it ferment basically overnight, we're gonna get a lot more interesting of a flavor. If you're in a rush, you could let these sit for an hour or so. They'll start rising up a little bit. They won't be as good. They'll still probably be better than anything you can buy in the store. I'm gonna let those sit and we'll come back tomorrow and see what our English muffins look like. All right. It's a new day. Our English muffins have been sitting and you can see all of the bubbles that have formed all the way through this mixture. This is exactly what we're going for. Those bubbles are going to translate to a really fluffy, really soft English muffin. Now we need to portion these out. I'm going to line a baking sheet with a bit of parchment paper. That's going to help prevent them from sticking. Remember, this was a really wet dough. And then I'm using corn flour. That's going to give it that crust that you typically associate with an English muffin. I'm using a scoop so that these stay relatively even sized. These are very, very forgiving, so it doesn't really matter if they're not a perfect circle or they're different sizes. Don't worry too much about it. And now it's time to cook these. We're not putting them in the oven. We're going to use a frying pan or a griddle if you have it. I just have a frying pan. Over medium or so heat, wait for it to get hot, and then just add the English muffin into the pan. Try to be as gentle as possible. You don't want to pop any of those bubbles. After about 5 minutes, give it a flip and cook on the second side for about another 5 or 10 minutes. And that's all there is to it. We have an English muffin for our Eggs Benedict. Like, look how much this puffed up. I think that overnight rest, letting the yeast eat, that's a little hard to say, has given us something that's really puffy, and it smells really, really good. Almost a sourdough type smell out of this. Still really, really hot. I need to put it down. They might be a little bit gummy if you use them now, which really wouldn't be the end of the world in this recipe. If we let them sit, we'll have, I think, a better English muffin. Will help preserve those bubbles that we worked so hard to get. And we've got a bit of work to do, getting our bacon ready, getting our eggs ready, and of course, getting our Hollandaise ready. I'm gonna make my bacon first because I wanna make the Hollandaise sauce last. It doesn't hold very well, so it might split, it might break, so we'll make that at the end. Let's get the bacon out of the package. I'm gonna cut these in half just so they're a little more manageable and they're about the same size as that English muffin. We're going to a cold pan and we're going to add the bacon into the cold pan and then add heat underneath the pan. Get them however you like them. If you like them really crispy, you can do that. If you like them less crispy, you can do that as well. It's completely up to you. So I promised at the beginning of this video to give you my tip for a perfect poached egg. I forget exactly where I got this tip from. I think it's Julia Child, but it works perfectly for me every single time. If you're a traditionalist and you think that there's only one way that an egg can be poached, you're not gonna like this very much. It works for me, and I never have failed poached eggs, which is a win in my book. So to start off the poached eggs, I've got some water that I'm going to bring up to a boil. I don't want this coming to a massive rolling boil. Once some bubbles start, I'm going to add the whole egg right into the water. This is the secret. 10 seconds in that just under boiling water will make the poached egg stay together, and it's the secret for perfect poached eggs. I've lowered the heat to the lowest that my burner will go to. You could even turn it off here and then just crack the egg into the water. I like cooking it for 3 minutes because that gives me still a really runny yolk. We're gonna move it to a paper lined sheet and we're done with the poached egg. Now let's move on to the Hollandaise sauce. I have a tip for this as well, but before we get to that, let's melt some butter. You could clarify this butter, which would mean I skim off those white milk solids at the top. I don't think it's necessary, so I'm going to just set it aside. Now this is the secret for a great Hollandaise sauce. You're gonna use a blender. I have an immersion blender here. I'm gonna add a whole egg right into the container and the juice of half of a lemon. Add a bit of salt, start the blender on medium speed just to warm up the eggs a little bit, and then drizzle the butter into the blender with the blender going on high speed. This should take about 15 seconds. Once all the butter's in, blend it for about another 15 to 30 seconds, then you'll have a smooth Hollandaise sauce that coats the back of a spoon. No double boilers, easiest Hollandaise sauce ever. And we are finally ready to assemble our Eggs Benedict. Even better than I thought it was going to be. The English muffin is fantastic. It's chewy. The bubbles really held up. Got a little bit of sourdough taste because we left it overnight. The Hollandaise is perfect. It's lemony. It's rich. I'm having another bite. Let's check in on the price to see how we did, to see if we stayed under that $2 limit. And $1.82. That's all it costs to make this delicious Eggs Benedict with a homemade English muffin, a perfectly poached egg, delicious Hollandaise sauce, and some salty, delicious bacon on the bottom. Hope you enjoyed today's challenge. Smash the like button, really helps out the channel. Subscribe if you want to see more videos. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.